Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Schaefer, and this is the Building Industry Applications Expert Q&A. We are going to kick off. I'm going to cover a few logistics slides, and then we're going to get right into your questions and hopefully have some strong conversations around building industry applications. So let's get started. The agenda. So we're going to cover what to expect. We're going to go through some team introductions. We're going to open up for Q&A, and we'll have some closing statements in the last few minutes. So the first part to really cover is how to engage. So use the chat box to ask your questions. You'll see it down there within the Teams application. You can post anonymously or use your name. We will be looking through the questions, and once approved, we will add the questions to the queue so that they can be answered. Please use the upvote, thumbs up, your favorite questions so we can see which ones are popular. The feedback is very important to us. Experts will answer verbally. We may answer some questions through the chat as well, but questions that are applicable to all will be answered verbally. We'll answer the most popular questions first, based on voting. And etiquette. Just so you know, this session may be recorded for internal use at Microsoft. We ask that you do not record this discussion and help our moderators, Jason and myself, by not spamming the chat. And we will talk a little bit about the code of conduct, and then we'll do intros as we get started. So our goal for these sessions is to include and empower every person in every organization to achieve more. This includes all things we do, software development to even events like this. So we ask that you exercise respectfulness, friendliness, and a fun atmosphere coming into this. We expect all digital events to uphold this code of conduct, and we will not tolerate any harassment or discrimination. As indicated in the third column, and we ask again that you do not record or take photos of the event. So with that said, let's talk about kind of what we want to talk about and things we specifically won't cover. So we love to talk about our current accelerators. We have many of them in the market. We have 2 experts on the call that can answer all of your questions around them. Ways you can get started with accelerators, our latest releases, how you can get involved, and how we build accelerators. We're not going to dive into licensing during this conversation. And with that said, I will turn it over to the experts to introduce themselves, and we'll jump into your questions.
Hi, I'm Raja Bhaya, Solutions Architect for the Industry Accelerators and Industry Apps that we built within Microsoft from Business Applications Group. I'll turn it over to Edgar.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Edgar Wilson, Principal Program Manager for Business Applications in Healthcare. So working on the Industry Accelerator teams to build out our industry solutions for the Power Platform and Dynamics 365.
Great. So I'm going to stop sharing, and feel free to start typing your questions into the queue, and we'll have the appropriate person answer.
So Brian, while we wait for some of the questions to come in here, and for the audience to put some of those questions in there, why don't we get kicked off with some primer questions to help give context to the audience. So one of the questions that we often get from events like this is, what exactly is an industry accelerator? What is it aimed to do, and why do they exist? So I'm gonna pick on you, Raj. So I'm gonna send that your way, and Edgar, if there's anything that you want to add on afterwards, I'll tee you up as well.
Yeah, so Industry Accelerators is primarily to help with all the base components that are needed and relevant for the different industries for our business applications platform. So you'll see a rich common data model that is available for each industries, which is also layered with a set of sample apps which kind of explain exactly how to use those data models. And then there also is a set of some Power Automate functions that start giving you the ability to trigger workflows and other things, as well as BI reporting. So we have given you a lot of starter reports for a lot of the BI reporting relevant for industries. And then I'll ask Edgar to chime in and speak a little bit more on the healthcare specific ones.
Essentially, to Raj's point, it's essentially a starting block. So it first encompasses that data model, which for healthcare is based on the HL7 fire specification, and also workflows through Power Automate, controls and customizations that have been added to the baseline model-driven app that is also a part of the accelerators, as well as Power BI reports, IoT solutions, really to help streamline deployments for partners and customers, as well as a rich set of documentation for how to install it and things such as that. And where we're getting to now is pulling in the first party apps for Dynamics for certain use cases. So the baseline accelerators can be installed in a core CDM environment. So, you know, a Power Apps license would suffice. However, we're looking at pulling in, you know, first party apps like the marketing app, omnichannel for customer service that also sit on top of that common data model. To be able to take advantage of the richness of the data model for the industry. So that's pretty much it.
Perfect. And there's a good, nice follow-on question from the audience out there of what accelerators exist today and for which industries. So let me just tee you up, Raj, and give you that one.
So today we have accelerators in various industries. So financial services has retail banking and commercial banking. We have recently launched media. We have not-for-profit, which has several solutions within it. We have education, which has K through 12 and higher ed. Then we have automotive on the dealership management side. Then we have healthcare, like Edgar was talking about, with a lot of solutions within that. And then we also have a early release or preview of manufacturing throughout all of these.
Perfect. I'll ask one of these questions a little bit differently, but the audience asked, is there a place where you list these different accelerators? So I'll ask that more as, how can you gain access to the accelerators? Where would someone go to find the accelerators?
Yeah, so there are several different ways of how you can access this, depends on your use cases. So if you're looking from an ISV perspective or a developer perspective, then you can go to GitHub and we publish all the resources over there available for you to use. If you're looking from a consumption perspective, or if you want to do a one-click install or install through the platform, then you can use the app source links to do that. And then for some of the Power BI functionality, we have pre-initialized the Power BI data models within the Power BI service. So if you were to use the data flows capability within the Power BI, you'll see the whole rich data, rich industry data structures available for you.
Perfect. And then Joe from the audience asked this one specifically for you, Edgar. So let me tee you up on this. Edgar, what do you see as the most immediate, urgent areas related to COVID that developers, sorry, my screen just flipped on me, that developers could help with?
That's a great question. So I'll say initially, obviously, the big need was around testing, contact tracing, as well as assessments, right? Not in that order. But we've since seen a shift now into, you know, as we know, many of the states are reopening. So getting people back to work safely is really the biggest, I'd say, urgent areas with respect to COVID that developers can really help us streamline. So reactivation scenarios for getting kids back to school, ensuring employees are safe when they're in the workplace. You know, something as sporting events, things of that nature. So really getting back to life, that's where we're seeing an immediate need, and have been working with some partners on some solutions. And actually, I've spoken to a customer of a very large amusement park about their reactivation strategy. So it's really something that I think every industry is trying to figure out, where it's ultimately a healthcare issue, but it could be agnostic to different industries. So that's really what I would think is probably the biggest need.
Perfect, thank you. Someone from the audience has asked a pretty interesting question. Are these Azure only offerings? Or, and I'll ask that a little bit differently for you guys. How does Azure play into these offerings?
Yeah, so these are solutions from Microsoft. So there's a set of components that are Azure enabled as well. So it depends on the use cases you have. So from our prime targets were business applications, because you're targeting the low-code, no-code platforms for a lot of these solutions, Accelerators as the first venue. But as part of it, you can have these accelerator components, like the data model, can be deployed onto the data lake. So you can leverage Synapse, and you can leverage a lot of those capabilities directly within Azure. There are IoT templates as well. So for healthcare, there's IoMT templates as well. So you can actually have your IoT, integrate and push the data into the data lake for your analysis. Then you can do things like machine learning, and you can do other things, which the summarized outputs of all of those features or out of those services that you're running in Azure can publish a summary information inside the local no-code platform for you to take events on. For example, in healthcare, if someone is using an IoT device for like a CPAP machine or something, the usage of all of those CPAP machines will be directly in Azure. But when the events get executed, as part of alerts, those alerts are moved into the low-code, no-code platform or Dynamics applications for you to leverage the case management capabilities or triage capabilities within all of those.
Perfect. And Edgar, I mean, speaking from a healthcare perspective, I think there's some really good insights that we could provide around how Azure plays in with our accelerator, and specifically around, some of the announcements that were made about the Microsoft Cloud for Health.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Jason. So essentially, with the announcement for the Microsoft Cloud for healthcare, we're now taking a 3-cloud approach to address the challenges in the healthcare industry. So in particular, the Azure API for Fire, as being that persistence layer to create that longitudinal record, we've now started our engineering groups working together to be able to connect the common data model to Azure API for Fire. So now on, within Power Platform Dynamics, you're able to perform more of the transactional aspects and still have that longitudinal patient record within Azure API for Fire. Also, with respect to Teams, we're working closely with the engineering groups at Teams, on the Teams team for virtual visits and different things about how we can help automate those processes. So with that announcement, you'll start to see, and this won't just be healthcare, this will be other industries as well, but a more holistic approach to how we go to market with all 3 of our clouds for industry solutions.
Awesome. Thank you, Edgar. And Raj, would you agree, and would you say that the thing that enables that, so Edgar mentioned, bringing in Teams and bringing in Azure and bringing in business applications, would you say that the reason that we can do that, the reason that all works, is the common data model?
Yes, absolutely. So common data model is what stitches all the different pieces of Microsoft infrastructure together. So if you are doing deep analytics, if you're doing any of those things, they typically live in a data lake. And then you can use Synapse for a lot of those deep mining information there, or machine learning capabilities. Then you also have a layer of the Power BI capabilities for reporting on top of that. So you can do that either directly through Synapse, or you can do reporting on the events of the things that were generated within the business applications group on top of Dynamics applications. So in case if you want to do case management analytics, you have all of those capabilities. And both of those components are surfaced within Teams. So now you have, contextual messaging around channels. So you can say, is I'm talking in this channel specifically about these patients or these conversations. You can have all that associated in a singular pane.
Awesome. Raj, well, we got you up here. One of the questions from the audience is, are there plans to expand accelerators to other industries?
Absolutely. So we are in the process of expanding into other industries as well and deep dive into some of the current industries. So for example, financial services itself has other components like insurance in there. We have telco, there's energy, there's a lot of different industries that are available that we are looking at and doing. So we target our, priority industries from Microsoft perspective. So we have an internal way of broadcasting that. And you can read about that on docs.microsoft.com on all the preview capabilities that are coming, as well as you can read what is planned in our semesters for our release notes.
Perfect. Edgar, I'm going to tee you up for this next one, but Raj, I fully expect that you'll probably lean in on this a bit too, but specifically to healthcare, I think healthcare is a good use case to really speak to this question around how deeply entities and workflows and really just all the components can really be customized for industry specific scenarios. How granular can we get? How specific and precise can we get with the platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can get as specific or complex as needed. Essentially, what we're providing in the accelerators is the baseline to get you started so that you're not having to build it from scratch. The data model itself, we are keeping that as managed so that is, if we have any updates, you're not going to lose those. However, you can extend the data model as needed, as well as any of the workflows or configuration that's included with the healthcare or any of the other accelerators. So really just think of it as a starting block, and you can make it as complex or uncomplex as you need to. And Raj, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that, but.
No, I think you covered it well. I mean, so we give you all the components in a modular manner. You can choose to use singular modules if you like, or you can use the entire suite of the modules of the data models and leverage it as your use cases are intended for.
Perfect. Back to you, Edgar. Another question around the healthcare industry. And this probably speaks, I guess the way I interpret this one is more around how do we go about standardizing when we're building the model. So the specific question is, within the healthcare industry, do you often find yourself with either insufficient data collection / organization when attempting to build your model?
That's a great question. So, and at the onset of the initial build of the healthcare accelerator, at the time and still today, Microsoft has made a big bet on the HL7 Fire standard. So HL7 Fire R4 at this point. So essentially, that is what Azure, the Teams group, as well as the us here in the Business Applications group have aligned on. And for our provider customers, that has seemed to suffice quite well. However, as a part of the iteration that we'll be looking to build out in October, that will also cover some of the HL7 Fire financial specifics. So as we iterate on this and work with additional customers and partners, we will continue to build into the accelerator data model. But to answer your question succinctly, at times it could be deemed insufficient. It really just depends on the customer and our partner that's looking to roll out the solution. However, if you follow HL7 Fire, then that's likely going to be the best place to look to see what's actually encompassed within the data model and which use cases you can provide for.
Perfect. Thank you, Edgar. Raj, I'm going to tee you up for this next one. it kind of piggybacks and builds upon, what you just touched on, Edgar, around, the how one of the ways that we go about looking to build these industry accelerators, which is looking for a governing body to help us with standardization. But this question is, how do you approach business or industries to define the base application and the workflows to start building it? Is it a pilot with a company or outside consultant or subject matter experts?
It could be all three of those. So when we build these data models, we look at what's available from the industry perspective. So if there's already an established standard, so in healthcare we have FHIR. So if we look at the established standard, then we also look at the quality of the standard, because there's a lot of standards out there, and sometimes there's mixed standards. In education, there's 6 different standards out there. So we look at the quality of the standard as well, and then we start taking a look at how do those use cases apply. I think we are never looking at lifting and shifting the entire standard, putting it in there. We target specific use cases that we want to target as part of our common data models. So then we have SMEs involved. So Edgar is an SME for healthcare. So we have various SMEs for each different industries and others on the team who start looking at what are the priority things that we want to innovate in those industries, what are the use cases needed to help with those respective ones. Then we start looking at the partner communities and the customer communities. So both of those help towards getting to a point where defining the use cases and then picking one or two of those use cases and testing that with the customers. So customer POCs are absolute strong point of validation throughout all of these journeys.
Perfect. Thank you, Raj. Maybe a good piggyback question off of that is from the audience around how to become an ISV and to contribute to business applications. I'll drill into that one a little bit more specifically, how to contribute to the accelerators and how to get hands-on resources, tutorials, licenses. We have noted here images. I'm guessing that's more like VMs for learning purposes.
Yes, there's a couple ways you can do that. So one of the ways is all our data models are available on GitHub. So you can request a pull request directly from the GitHubs. We go through a validation process to saying is your recommended changes associated with those. If you want to jointly work on some of these things, you're happy, our teams will connect with you happily and work with some of those different use cases as well and help prioritize what we need as well as part of that. And the other big question that needs to be answered is what is that you want to build on top of? So there's certain components you would want to contribute to the IP that we have, which is posted on GitHub, or there's other components that you might want to say is, this is my IP that I want to build as an ISV, and how do I extend it? So there's a couple different paths there. So if you're looking to contribute, then we welcome connections directly to the teams as well as the GitHub integrations that we have, and we have a CDN engage form, which will happily get our PMs engaged with you directly. Or you have the ISV side of it. So we have teams specifically dedicated for ISVs to be able to help guide throughout these paths.
And then Raj, I'll just add to that. For anyone that's looking to get out there and get access to learning resources around the Power Platform, around Dynamics, any of the Microsoft products really, I would just go to learn.microsoft.com, which will actually take you to our docs. And from there, you can go in and you can see we have specific sections around Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform, which is what's going to encompass things like Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, the Common Data Service, which is what the Common Data Model is built on as well. And another question that we have out there is, around the energy industry. Is there anything that we have today around energy? And if not today, if we don't have something today, where would energy fall in terms of us addressing something there?
Yeah, so today we have a very strong presence in the Dynamics Financial and Services within the supply chain application. For energy, there's a lot of limitations around that. Obviously building on top of energy from a business applications group is on top of those products. But then there is a segment of it where you can have the data model exposed inside Data Lake, and you can actually build additional capabilities there, as well as the IoT extensions that we have.
And we are coming to the top of the hour, so I do want to be cognizant of that. We have about 2 more questions in queue. The first question is, I'll keep you up, Raj, about our automotive accelerator. How do we get local support? How can we connect to the community for Europe, EMEA?
So local support depends on, if it's a customer or partner. For customers, I would recommend through the customer channels. For the customers, we have the customer channels, we have the field resources, like the TSPs and AEs and FAs or SSPs, if you will, so the solution providers. They can heavily get you engaged there, or you have from the partner side, there's a whole partner ecosystem, so both on the SI and the ISVs. So we have teams of groups, so I would highly recommend reaching out to your appropriate reps out there, and they can get you connected.
Perfect. And then Edgar, I'm going to tee you up for this last question here. Around how can I find out more information about the upcoming Healthcare Financial Accelerator?
We will actually be providing a marketing campaign as well as a white paper around that. The best way to find out about it will likely be through either AppSource or GitHub. We'll be sure to make sure that that is outlined, and also Docs would be a great place, great resource for that as well. That'll probably be the first place that it'll be.
Perfect. And I'll try to squeak in one more question. We got about 2 minutes left. Don't want to leave anybody's question unanswered here. So thank you everyone who has posted a question and kept this pretty darn interactive. Really appreciate that. But Alexander from the audience asked the question of what can an ISV company bring? So anyone that's doesn't know the ISV acronym, independent software vendor, what can an independent software vendor company bring to the table to add value to the industry accelerators? Perhaps an integration with IoT digital twins?
So there's a lot of white space for ISVs to fill within industries, and depends on which industry. That's a very broad question. So it depends on which industries you're targeting. So I'll give various examples, and hopefully that'll help. So from a one of the ISV extensions that could exist out there is configure price quote. So if someone wants to do configure price quote for a set of purchases that need to happen for a specific industry, that's one set of use cases someone can deliver. There's a lot of white space for optimizing paper processes, if you will. So a lot of banks and a lot of factories still run on paper checklists. If they want to convert those into checklists and actually having a process around that, would be other good examples associated with it. If you're looking at a third option, could be around IoT side of it. So there's a fair bit of IoT integrations that ISVs can help with, and IoTs have multiple paths there. So you have the hot path, the warm path, and the cold path. So hot path IoT is almost like stream analytics, or it is stream analytics. If something is happening, you want something to be triggered on the moment it happens. You would use something on the hot path, if you will. A warm path would be, when a set of series of events closed, and at the summary of the event, then you want to invoke something. You can evoke something on those pieces. And the cold path could be your post-analysis. So, what was my behavior or driving behavior for a month or so? And at the end, if it's giving me a grade of my driving behavior, which can then influence my insurance or other protocols that we have. So these kind of implementations are just examples. Industries are pretty, there's lots of white spaces available to fill.
Perfect. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for all the questions that came in, and I'm going to turn it over to Brian to close us out.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for attending, everyone. You can see the links there on how you can connect with us, as well as the resources we spoke about. We've also pasted them into the chat. So thank you for your questions and time, and enjoy your day.